Breaking news, an internal memo leaked at Nikon revealing 2 new DSLR cameras coming in 2021. This is great news. For the 98% of Nikon shooters using F-Mount DSLRs, you just might get an update. So I'm going to tell you what I think those are. But first, I want to take a second and plug our Black Friday specials, which offer huge discounts on educational material. So many of you are saying, hey, we want more tutorials, we want less ads. Here you go. Tons of tutorials, so many videos, so many hours that you've never seen before. Absolutely no ads, but there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? So you got to pay a little bit, but we're discounting them for a massive amount this week only. We have a brand new flash training video that will show you how to get past natural light so you can have reliable, gorgeous light in any conditions. It doesn't matter if clouds come, if it's raining, you can still make amazing portraits or other types of shots. Check it out at northrup.photo. It's only $20, $19.99. That's 50% off. The price is going up soon. You can also get our Book Lover bundle, which includes all 4 of our books. In Chelsea, we run this publishing company out of our house. I will be hand autographing each of these books and then stuffing them in an envelope myself. This is not some big corporation. This is a 2-person small business that you're supporting, and I appreciate it. These make awesome gifts. Especially stunning digital photography is a perfect gift for anyone who takes pictures, whether it's with a real camera, a smartphone, or a drone, because I just updated it to include all the latest photography trends. But of course, I can help you out with your photo editing, and my photography buying guide helps you decide which of these types of cameras and lenses will get the most bang for your buck, and I promise it'll pay for itself. First up, F-Mount makes sense for Nikon. I know they're moving towards mirrorless, everybody is. But about 1.5 years ago, we asked the question, are DSLRs dead? And we did a deep dive into camera sales. And it turned out that almost everybody owned a Canon or Nikon DSLR. Almost nobody had moved to mirrorless, and even in 2020, that continues to be true. I don't have the exact numbers, but I estimate between 96 and 98% of Nikon shooters are on DSLRs. That means they cannot use the new mirrorless lenses. And honestly, if they've already figured out how to use a DSLR and they're happy with the focusing and the viewfinder, then there's not a lot of reason for them to learn a new mirrorless system. What they want are new F-Mount DSLRs that take advantage of the latest technologies like sensor stabilization and beautiful smooth video autofocus. And Nikon has been giving that to them. They updated the Nikon D6, they updated the Nikon D780, but that leaves out a couple of big gaps, and people want those, and they aren't necessarily ready to move to the mirrorless system. Nikon has stated that their priorities are to serve the enthusiasts and the professionals. How does Nikon best address the needs of these high-end photographers with a few bucks to spend even in 2020? Well, a lot of them are wildlife and sports photographers, as well as portrait photographers, and they're already shooting DSLRs, and they love that there's no viewfinder lag, which we found to be critical. Even with the R5, even with the A9, the lag throws us off for both moving animals and sports subjects, meaning we'd rather be shooting a DSLR. DSLRs also have better battery life, which is so important when you need to get through a game or a long wildlife session. And if you already know how to use a DSLR, there's no relearning like you would have to if you switched to a mirrorless system. So I do believe there's huge demand for this, and I also believe it's the single best way for Nikon to make short-term cash because the sale is so much easier. It's a direct upgrade. The benefits are clear. You don't have to wonder if you're giving anything up by switching to a whole new mirrorless system. It's a smaller ask of consumers. So I think it makes financial sense in the short term, even though long term Nikon wants people to move to the mirrorless system. Honestly, they're bleeding cash right now, so they need all the help they can get. Nikon Rumors has leaked an internal presentation that seems to reveal 2 coming Nikon DSLRs. My guess is the first one is going to be a Nikon D580, and I'm really guessing at the name, but I think it's going to be a successor to the Nikon D500. Not the most popular camera. It was an APS-C camera that shot 10 frames per second with only 20 megapixels, but it had this amazing autofocus system that was the best at tracking sports and wildlife, and we recommended it over and over again. Even my neighbor across the street bought one when he wanted to get into wildlife photography based on my recommendation. That was this year, because that's how amazing the D500 is, but it is old. The video autofocus is unusable, and they really could refresh it with their mirrorless technologies and make it a camera that could last well into the 2020s. I think they're going to keep the APS-C sensor. I think they're even going to keep the 20 megapixels, but they're going to up the frames per second to 14 frames per second. 14 frames per second would match the Nikon D6 high-end $6,500 DSLR, so we know it's possible. And it's even easier with an APS-C mirror and shutter. Those could technically move faster, so we might even see it go up to 16 frames per second. The older Nikon D500 had an XQD card that provided no buffering no matter how long you were shooting, and I think Nikon will upgrade that to the CF Express Type B card, as well as an SD card for JPEG backups, and I think they'll upgrade the video capabilities to 4K 60. I don't actually think they'll give the Nikon D580 IBIS, because that would raise the price, and also because these are focused sports photographers, these APS-C users. You know, they have the Nikon Z5, which is like full frame and $1,300. If you want full frame, you could get it for cheaper. But these people want a high frame rate, a reliable autofocus system, and a viewfinder with no lag. And the D580 that I'm imagining would fill this niche. I bet they could ask $2,000 for it. But I think they might even go higher, because Nikon really does need to make some quick profit off of loyal customers. So maybe it should be $2,500. The second camera, I think it's going to be a Nikon D880, the follow-up to what we still consider to be the greatest DSLR ever made, the Nikon D850. We fell in love with the D850, and I still have not been able to convince Chelsea to sell it, because it feels better in the hands than no other camera ever has. The Nikon mirrorless cameras did not replicate the experience of the D850. They didn't have the lighted buttons that made nighttime shooting so much easier. They didn't have the buttons along the left side that allowed you to use a two-handed workflow when quickly reviewing and processing pictures in camera. I think Nikon needs to bring us all of that in an update to the D850, but upgrade its really, really outdated video system, which I shot a lot with in 4K, but I found it almost unusable because the autofocus was just so unreliable. They can address that. They have the technology now, but I think they'll keep the same 45 megapixel sensor. I would love to see them use Sony's 60 megapixel sensor, but I actually didn't see huge advantages for it, and they just put that 45 megapixel sensor in the Z7 Mark II, so I think they'll keep using that. But I think they'll give it the same 14 frames per second out of the D6, giving you a high megapixel monster. Like, why hold back at this point? There's no need to risk cannibalizing your own market when Nikon is so focused on pushing people to higher price points. Just give them everything and charge them as much as you can possibly get away with. It'll have that same CF Express and SD card along with 4K 60, but I think in this camera, they will actually give it sensor stabilization, and that would be so valuable because that high megapixel sensor shows camera movement so easily. I'd love to get that stabilization in my unstabilized primes, like my favorite portrait lens, the Nikon 105 f1.4. Here's a question that we asked about both Canon and Nikon 2 years ago when they were pondering whether they should make mirrorless lenses or DSLR lenses. If they make a DSLR lens, they can be used by all their DSLR users as well as their new mirrorless users, as long as they just put an adapter on it. But if they make a mirrorless lens, only their mirrorless users can use it. Now, in the case of Nikon, about 98% of their buyers are on DSLRs, and only about 2% are on their mirrorless cameras. So which do you think they can make more money from? A new mirrorless lens or a new DSLR lens? The answer is they're going to make way more money from a DSLR lens. They are bringing out new lenses, and here's what I think they're going to be. They're going to launch an F-Mount Nikon 600mm f4. This is a very expensive lens. We have the current generation here, but we just put it up against the Sony and Canon versions, and it is now outdated. It weighs, I think, a couple of pounds more than those lenses do, and when you're shooting sports or wildlife, you feel it. Even if you use a monopod, when you're walking to and from location, you feel it. Shooting it side by side with the lighter weight competitors really made us want to switch, even though we invested $13,000 in that big lens. I'm sure these are high profit, low production lenses from Nikon, and so I think they could ask $13,000 or more from the upgrade. Nikon is already committed to making a 600mm Z-mount mirrorless lens, so why not take the exact same design and make it for a DSLR? With these telephoto lenses, they don't need to build elements close to the sensor, so the flange distance, the lens mount size shouldn't make any difference to Nikon. The second F-mount DSLR lens I think they'll upgrade is also targeted at professionals, and that is something that is in every professional portrait photographer's bag, the 85mm f1.4. This is such a critical lens, but we reviewed the Nikon 85mm f1.4 for our own purposes and we hated it. We bought it, we were so excited about it, but we ended up just returning it or selling it or something because we decided it was just terrible quality. It had awful chromatic aberration problems, it had terrible contrast, backlit shots were just completely shot. Like, it took far too much time trying to clean up the terrible optical artifacts, and it just didn't compete with the 85mm f1.4s from Canon and Sony, and thus it needs to be updated. Nikon did release the 105mm f1.4, and it was amazing, and that's what we ended up using, but something a little bit shorter, that's very in style right now. And so I'd love to see Nikon rev that 85mm f1.4 and give us the optical quality of the 105, and I think Nikon could ask $2,000 or even more for that, and their massive existing base of portrait photographers would flock to this new 85mm lens that solves all those problems and reduces their post-processing time. Nikon has updated their Z-mount lens roadmap to let you know what's coming in the near future, really through 2022, and some information has been leaked through Nikon rumors. For Nikon Z50 users, Nikon is bringing a DX18-140, which is like a 24 to 200mm super zoom. They're also having a 28 and 40mm primes and a micro 50mm, which means an extra small 50mm prime. Macro lenses, which focus up close, will be coming in the 60 and 105mm focal lengths. That 105 is perfect for insects. And they have a new 85mm S-line lens coming, and I think it's going to be an 85 f1.2 so that they can hang with Canon. They're launching a 24 to 105, which I expect to be an f4, a 100 to 400 zoom, a 200 to 600, which I bet will be slower, like f6.3 or even f8, as well as a 400 and 600mm prime, and I'm going to guess it's going to be a 400 f2.8 and a 600mm f4. Nikon Rumors says that they're going to be updating SnapBridge to allow you to install firmware updates probably through your phone, probably not directly from the internet, and that Nikon is improving their IAF to allow it to focus on wildlife. That's something that only Canon has figured out well enough now for us to actually use. But when you use an R5 or R6, it's absolutely amazing, and it's clear Canon has set the bar that everybody else needs to catch up to. Just a reminder, we're having our Black Friday sale right now for 1 week only. Get our brand new flash training, never before seen, for half off, only $20. Ad-free, just tutorials, short segments, no clickbait, just what you absolutely need to know. But of course, nothing's for free. You got to pay for it, right? And we appreciate your support. Our professional portrait training is half off. The art and science of photography has changed some people's careers. We get such good feedback about it. It's over 10 hours of never before seen video. So check that out at northrup.photo for 50% off, or get it together as a bundle and save yourself even more. Again, thanks to Nikon Rumors for all that information. And in the comments down below, I'd like to hear whether you actually are interested in a Nikon DSLR, whether you would buy it, and what you'd like it to look like. What do you want the price point to be, and what F-mount lenses would you like to see? Thanks so much, and bye.